The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hi everyone, my name is Trish Connor-Cato. This course is for any user who has prior Tableau experience. With so many competing technologies, Tableau has emerged as a powerful favorite in the world of business intelligence solutions. This course will take your Tableau skills to the next level by teaching you best practices along with the most sought-after dashboard designs. You're about to embark upon an intense but amusing journey that will provide you with an arsenal of innovative techniques. Your new tool set will help you reuse your current Tableau worksheets and to create new ones for the purpose of including those worksheets on dashboards that you will be proud to share. Users will enjoy interacting with your dashboards for the purpose of getting deep analytical information from them, and they will be impressed with their flexibility. Most important, the class will overview various business scenarios that translate into different types of dashboards, and you will leave with that understanding. By the end of the course, you should be able to create effective dashboards on your own, and you will also walk away with class files that help you get a head start. In each module, we'll work with a specific data set and build visualizations to be used on our dashboards. In our final module, Module 9, we will use regional data to learn about hovering actions and granularity. We'll also learn about the count versus COUNT-D functions, ratio, and standard deviation.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
In this final module, we'll be using regional data, and we'll be learning how to use hovering actions on dashboards. We'll learn how to change the granularity on your visualizations. We'll review, and I know we talked about it briefly earlier, the difference between the count function and the count distinct function. You'll learn how to use ratios, and we'll end by using standard deviation 2 different ways. All right, let's see what we can do with this regional data. It's in the form of an Excel workbook, so I'm going to click on Excel and just grab the file. And you'll notice that it's mostly measures in this file. We have the county and state fields, which have been assigned geographic roles. We have the region field, which has not been assigned a geographic role. And then the rest is measures: adult obesity by percent of population, adult smokers, children in poverty, diabetic, food insecure, number of records, and physically inactive. We're not going to use number of records, so I'm going to go ahead and hide that field. And let's go to our first sheet. Now you'll notice at the bottom, right above measure values, there's a measure that shows up at the sheet view called regional data count. We're going to hide that field as well. And then we'd like to drag measure names to filters. And so it just has the ones that are tracking these statistics. We're going to select OK. And then we're going to show that filter, and we want to make it a single value drop down. So what we're going to do first, we're going to create 2 different maps, and then we're going to add them each to 2 different dashboards so that you can learn about hovering actions. And so this is going to be the first of our 2 maps. Let's go ahead and name this sheet State Map with Tracking Statistics. And then actually, let's just name it State Map. I have a better idea for this. state map. Okay. And so now we're getting ready to add our fields here. We're going to drag the state field into the view so it automatically creates a map for us. And let's drag the region field to color. So we get our color legend. We're going to drag measure values to detail on the marks card. And notice it's just showing 1 because we have a single value drop down, and that's the one that's showing in our filter. And let's drag measure names to columns in front of longitude. So when you hover over any mark on the map, right now you're seeing the region, the state, and the adult obesity. And we can change to different measures, and you'll see how that shows up on the tooltip as well. I'm going to put it back on adult obesity, the first one. Now I'm going to just put my pan tool on so I can pan across the map. And I'm going to zoom in on it a little bit more. And then I'm going to go to size on the marks card, and I'm going to increase the size of the marks just a little bit. I'm going to add a background map, so I'm going to go to background maps from the map menu, and I'm going to use the normal one this time. And we're going to go back to the map menu and go to background layers. And we want to add coastline. We also want the county borders and names. And let's see. And we'll add our water labels. We're also going to add a data layer to this map. So I'm going to go down to no data layer at the bottom. And I'm going to do the median household income under U.S. households. For the detail, I'll leave it on state. And I'm going to just choose a different palette. I'm going to choose the brown sequential one. And of course, we get our legend on the right showing that information about the household income. So real basic map, we're going to do a few other things here. Let's go up to the title, and after the sheet name placeholder, I'm going to type a space and the word tracking, and then I'm going to go to my insert drop down and select measure names and click OK. So it's more dynamic. As I'm looking at a different measure, you'll notice that that shows in the title. It also shows up here. Right now I'm on diabetic here, right? And that's showing the header. And I want to format that header just a little bit. And I want to make the font like 11 point for the header and make it bold. Now would be a good time to save this file. I'm going to call mine regional tracking. Now let's go ahead and close the format pane and bring up a new sheet. And we'll name this one State/County Map. For this one, let's add a state filter. We're going to use all the states. And we want to show that filter as a single value drop down. And then we're going to add a county filter. And we're just going to click OK. And we're going to add that one. We're going to show it. And we want that one to be a multiple value drop down. And then I want state filter to come before county, so I'm just dragging county underneath it. Let's go ahead and drag measure names to filter. We'll just do OK. And let's show that one and make it a single value drop down as well. So I want state, county, and then measure names filter in that order on the right. Now we're going to drag state into the view. And if your map didn't populate, you would want to make sure that your county filter is set to all and not none. Now I'm going to just pan so I get this centered a little bit. And I'll zoom in on it. Let's drag measure names to columns in front of longitude. And we're going to drag measure values to detail. And go ahead and drag county to detail as well. So now let's go to our state filter, which is set to single value. And I'm going to select California. And then when I go to my county dropdown, it only has the California counties. So I am going to deselect all for county. And I'm going to select Alameda, and I'm going to go down and find San Francisco County. So it's my San Francisco and my Alameda. So the focus is now on just those two counties. I'm going to go back to all for my county filter. So now, I mean, you can go ahead and add a background layer if you'd like, and a data layer if you'd like one of those on this map. So I will let you do that on your own. But before we do that, let's make this title dynamic. So I'm going to double click it. It has the sheet name. And I'll say after that, like we did on the other one, tracking, and then I'll insert the measure name. So it will update. I'm going to go ahead and save again. So go ahead and pause the video, select a background for your map and layers if you'd like. I use normal again. And this time I did the male-female ratio data layer, and I used that same brown sequential palette, and it's by state. So now we have both of our maps ready. We have to create one more thing, which is not going to make very much sense right now until after we get to the dashboard, but we need to create this other sheet. So go ahead and bring up a new sheet and save. Let's name the new sheet Reset Filter. And we're just going to create a calculated field for the sheet. So let's hide the title first of all. And we're just going to create a simple calculated field. And we're going to name the calculated field a Reset Filter. And then in double quotes, we're just going to type Reset Filter. And so this is ultimately going to be a button on the dashboard that can reset a filter. In other words, clear a filter so all the values show. So we're going to click OK on that. Doesn't make sense in this moment, but you'll see it play out. So let's go and bring up a new dashboard page. Go ahead and get your size together. And let's go ahead and drag a fixed horizontal container onto the page and bring our state map into it. And we're going to leave that one. Yeah, we're going to leave it showing the title. let's go to another dashboard page, size it, and we're going to bring a horizontal container into this page and bring in our state county map. And what I'm going to do on the page is I'm going to just take my state back to all. And here, because we didn't do it on the sheet, I want to format that header just to make it bigger like we did on the other map. I think we did the font like up to 12 or something. Yeah. And I think I made it bold. Okay. So now let's name our first dashboard, and we'll name it State Map Tracking. And our second dashboard, we're going to name State County Map Tracking. And go ahead and save your file again. And you can close that format pane if it's still open. And now we're about ready to set up our hovering action. Let's go back to our state map tracking dashboard. And what we can do here is go to the dashboard menu, and we're going to choose actions. So we're going to do a hovering filter action for this. So we're going to click add action, and then we're going to choose the filter action. And we're going to name this tracking filter. So the source sheet is the state map tracking that we're on. And over on the right, we're going to run action on hover. The target sheet, we're going to do the drop down and choose our state county map tracking dashboard. And it only has the one object on it, so that's all that's showing there right now. And over on the right of that, we're going to say clearing the selection will show all values. And then at the bottom, it's asking you, what do you want to filter? All fields or selected fields? We want selected fields, and we're going to click to add, and we're going to choose state. And at the bottom, we're going to click OK. And then we're going to click OK again. So it happened so quickly. If I'm on state map tracking and I hover over any state, it takes me to state county map tracking, and it's filtered for the state that I hovered over on the previous sheet. So if I go back to state map tracking and I hover over California, it automatically switches me to state county map tracking, and it is filtered for California. Now, the thing about it is, you'll notice that these filters on state county map tracking, they are not updating. This is a different kind of filter. So they're both saying all, and that's not the case. And so the thing is that if you're going to do a filter on a hover action, I would suggest getting rid of the filter that the hover action is controlling. So I'm going to just remove this state filter from the dashboard. Now, I could always bring it back. So actually, I'm going to say cancel that because it's in a container. We'll just leave it there for right now. I actually didn't have it selected. I had the container selected. But before we do that, let me show you something else. The other thing that happens is that my county drop down is not showing just California. It's showing all of the counties. So both of these are inactive. So what I would normally do is I wouldn't have either of them here. The intent would be so that if they're using these filters, they could filter by one state at a time, and then they can filter by different counties in the state. So I'm selecting them individually without having the container selected, and I'm going to remove them from the dashboard, both state and county. And now I'm going to show you how to use that reset filter that we created on the other sheet. So now we're getting ready to use that reset filter that we created. But first, let's go back to that sheet and make sure that you dragged it to text on the marks card. The title is hidden, and just fit it to the entire view. And then let's go back to our state county map tracking dashboard. We are going to put it on floating and drag the reset filter sheet onto the view. And then we are going to resize it. Well, first I'm going to hide the title here. We don't need the title. I'm going to resize it so it fits over to the right. And it certainly doesn't need to be as tall as it is. So something like that. Now I can actually go to the sheet that it's on. Let's go to right-click on it and go to Format. And let's make this font about 11 point and bold. And you could give it a background color if you want. I'm going to just leave it that way. And now we can go back to the dashboard. It looks a little bit better in that box when it's a little bit bigger. And that's good. And so now we're going to go to our dashboard menu again. Go back to actions. And we're going to add an action here. And it's going to be another filter action. And the source sheet is the state county map sheet. And we're going to, that dashboard. And then we're going to uncheck state county map under source sheet. So just this filter is selected. On the right, I'm going to choose select this time. And then the target sheet is going to be the same dashboard. You're going to uncheck reset filter down there. And it's going to be performed on that map. And over to the right, we want to say show all values. At the bottom, we're going to do the option button for selected fields, and we're going to choose the state field from the list. Now you'll notice at the bottom it says it's a warning, missing field on reset filter. That's because the state field is not on that reset filter worksheet. We don't want it there. That error is going to come up, or that warning is going to come up. We can safely ignore it. It's not going to impact what we're doing. And we're going to click OK. And we're going to OK again. And now we're ready to test our reset filter. We can just go over to the right. We put it on select. So when we click on it, it should populate the entire map again. If I go back to state map tracking dashboard, and let's say I hover over New York. Let me get up there without hovering anywhere else. So now this one is filtered for New York, and I can just click reset filter to get it back to all the data. Pretty cool. So something else you can do before we go back to creating more visualizations for our next topic. If I right click on my state map tracking dashboard tab at the bottom, I can say hide all sheets. So any sheets that I'm using on that dashboard are now hidden. You'll notice they're not showing down in my view there. And I'm going to do the same on my state county map tracking dashboard, hide all sheets. So now I'm just seeing those two dashboard sheets. If you want to show the sheets again, you can just right click and unhide all sheets on either dash. Kind of makes your file a little bit more concise. Once you have the vises on a dashboard, you may not need to see the individual sheets, although you can still go to the sheet even though it's hidden. So just wanted you to know that. Let's bring up a new sheet now, and we'll get ready to talk about granularity. Let's go ahead and name this sheet Exclude County. Granularity refers really to the level of detail that you're seeing, and I'm going to spell exclude right here. It refers to the level of detail you're seeing in your view, really. So if we put state, region, and county fields in the view, right, the most level of detail would be at the county level, and the least amount of detail would be at the state level. Now, there are functions that you can use that are known as level of detail functions to control granularity. And we're going to use one of them now. There's only three kinds. There's exclude, include, and fixed. We're going to use exclude now, and you'll be able to use, you'll see fixed, which I really think is the most useful one, in a little bit. So we're going to start with exclude. Let's drag both state and county to rows and adult obesity to text on the marks card. Level of detail expressions, they are performed on the fields that you have in the view. And you'll see how this works. This is one of the hardest topics to explain in Tableau, so bear with me here as we build this. Let's go ahead and create a new calculated field. And we're going to call this calculated field Exclude County, just like we did the sheet name. And so when you're using, and I said, you know, the level of detail expressions, there are three different varieties, but they use the same syntax. So what we need to do here is we need to start it with an open curly bracket. And then we're going to grab the exclude function. And we're going to start typing in county and grab the county field. So you start with the open curly bracket, use exclude, include, or fixed. And then after your field that you're performing it on, you're going to do a colon. And then after the colon, we're going to grab the sum function and grab the adult obesity % of population field. So this is really saying, when you perform this calculation, and it says it contains errors. So let me fix that because it has to end with a closing curly bracket. So it's saying exclude the county when you're calculating the sum of the adult obesity % of population. Okay. So you're like, well, what does that mean? Let's go ahead and click OK. And let's just grab that exclude county calculated field and drag it into the table. So let's also go to analytics, drag totals onto the view and drop it in subtotals. All right. So you notice that you have the same number when you're excluding the county. So this first column, right, is the adult obesity % of population by county. The second column has the same repeating number. Now we added subtotals. So if we scroll down to the bottom of Alabama, we'll see the subtotal. So it's showing you, when you're excluding the county, it's only showing you the total adult obesity for that state, right? So it's the same number in the total. So why is that different than just taking the county field off of there, right? So if I remove my county pill, then I'm just seeing it by state and I don't have the counties listed. So I want the counties to be listed. So I'm going to put those back up there, add all members. And this way, because maybe I want to do a further calculation, like a county is excluded. So maybe because I have the by county number here, I might want to do a ratio or something like that. So if I didn't have the subtotals, I wouldn't have that 23.79 for Alabama. I can see it clearly there, and I might want to use that in a calculation with a specific county metric. So that is the exclude level of detail expression that we use there. Go ahead and save your file. Now, aside from using level of detail expressions for granularity, there is another way that you can do this. Let's go ahead and bring up a new sheet. Let's name this sheet Food Insecurity and Physically Inactive. We'll say metrics by state/region. Let's drag the state field and the food insecure field into columns. And we'll drag region and physically inactive to rows. So you have one mark for each state region, and when you hover over it, it gives you the region, the state, the food insecure, and the physically inactive. That is because by default, when you're using measures in a view, they are aggregated. So both of these came up as the sum. And if you want more granularity, you can unaggregate your measures. And you can do that by going up to the analysis menu and unchecking aggregate measures. So now you have more detail, you have more granularity, right? It's still saying the same thing, but as you hover over it, right, you see the numbers are changing. So you actually have more detail when you are not aggregating your measures. So let's drag our state field to filters. We are going to use all. And this time, instead of showing the filter, right-click on it and show the highlighter. So you get that highlight state over there. And then go ahead and drag region to color. So we get some color coding on this based on the regions. Instead of standard, let's fit it to the width. Ooh, that does not look good. So we're going to put it back on standard. So you have more granularity here when you're not aggregating your measures. And if you go back to analysis and aggregate your measures again, you'll have less granularity. I'm going to unaggregate them. Go ahead and save your file. Let's go ahead and bring up another new sheet, and we're going to create a another map strictly for obesity. And so for this one, you're going to learn a couple of other functions along the way, including one of the other level of detail functions. So let's name this sheet obesity map. So our other maps, they can change it to different measures. This one is going to be specific to obesity. And we have to create some calculated fields here. So let's go ahead and get those started. The first one, we're going to call it regional obesity rate. And this is where we're going to use a level of detail calculation. This time we're going to use fixed. So earlier we used exclude, and we did that on the county field. So when you're using exclude or include, it takes into account the measures in the view. When you use the fixed level of detail calculation, it doesn't take into account what's in the view. So if you look over on your right, if you expand this and you just type in fixed there, you can see it has the same syntax with the curly brackets, right? So it computes an aggregate using only the specified dimensions in the calculation. Whereas if you type in exclude over there, it computes an aggregate excluding the specified dimensions if they're present in the view. So it's dependent upon what's in the view as well. Fixed is not. So we're going to create this calculation for regional obesity rate. We're going to start with our opening curly bracket, and we're going to grab the fixed function, and we're going to grab the region field, and then we have to do our colon, and we want AVG, the average of adult obesity. And then at the end of that, we need to have a closing curly bracket. So we have that calculated field done. We're going to click OK, and we're going to create another calculated field. This one is going to be using the absolute function, the round function, and the fixed level of detail expression. So abs is the first one on the list for absolute, right? That returns the absolute value of the given number. So you have your example right there. And then you can search for round, and that rounds a number to the nearest integer or to a specified number of decimal places. So in that example there, it's rounding to 1 decimal place. All right. So this calculation, we are going to name it difference from region. And we're going to start with the absolute function. And then we're nesting in the round function. And then we're nesting in our fixed. So we need an open curly bracket. And we're going to type get fixed in there. And then we're going to choose the state field, comma, the county field. And then after county, and we don't want to be outside those parentheses, so I'm going to go right after the square bracket after county. We're going to do our colon there. And then we're going to do AVG for average. Grab adult obesity. And after that closing paren at the end of the line for adult obesity. So you have your closing bracket after the field name. And then right now you have like 3 parentheses there. We're going to click after the first parenthesis, between the first and the second one. And we are going to type our closing curly bracket, comma, 2, and then click in between the next parentheses, right? So after 2, you have a parenthesis. You actually have 2 of them. You want to be in between those 2. And you're going to type minus, and now we want the round function on regional obesity rate. After obesity rate, you're going to do a comma 2. And then at the end, you should have 2 closing parens. So you're like, what? Let's parse this. We want it to return the absolute value of this calculation. We want it to round the average of adult obesity based on state and county to 2 decimal places. After that, we want it to subtract the round of the regional obesity rate, which is also 2 decimal places. So we're going to click OK on that one. So that's the second of 3 calculated fields that we have to do here to get where we're going. So let's go ahead and do the third one. This one, we're going to name above or below. And we're going to use an if, then, else, if, else in statement with a couple of round functions mixed in. So now we're going to start with our if function and then round. And we're going to grab regional obesity rate field. And we want a comma 2, so we want to round it to 2 decimals. Come outside of that closing parenthesis. And we're going to type equal, round again. And this time we're going to do our open curly bracket. And we're going to use that fixed level of detail function again for the state, comma, county. And at the end of that line, click after the closing bracket for county inside the parentheses. That's where we're going to do our colon. And then we're going to grab the average function on the adult obesity field. And I'm going to just scroll across here. After the adult obesity field, we want to be outside of the first closing paren. So there's 2 of them at the end. We want to be between them. And we're going to do our closing curly bracket there, comma 2 for the 2 decimals for the round function. Come outside of that parenthesis at the end of the line. Press enter so we get a new line and grab your then function. And we're going to type in double quotes, on par with. Enter. We're going to do else if. I'll explain it after we get it all in. Then we're going to grab the round function again. And this time on the regional obesity rate, which we created. After that closing field bracket, we're going to do comma 2. Come outside of the closing parenthesis. And we're going to do less than. And then round. Then we're going to put our open curly brace or bracket. We're going to grab fixed again. And then the reference is going to be state, comma, county. After county's closing square bracket, we're going to do our colon. And we're going to grab average again. And then adult obesity. So I'm going to scroll across so I make sure I know where I am. I'm going to put myself in between the two parentheses. I'm going to do my closing curly bracket, comma 2. And then I'm going to go to the end of that line and press, yeah, there is a closing parenthesis after 2. I'm going to press enter because then we need another then statement. Now we're going to use the string function. So I'll look at it over here, right? It returns a string given an expression. So if you use a measure in here or a number like age, it returns all of the values of the age measure as strings. And so we want to make sure that happens. So we're going to do str and grab that string function on this then line. And then we're going to nest in round. And we want it on the difference from region calculated field. After the region field's closing square bracket, we're going to do an asterisk for multiplication, 100. Come outside of that parenthesis, so you're in between two parentheses now. We're going to do a comma 2. Go to the end and do another closing parenthesis, plus sign, and then double quotes. We're using the percent symbol above. Enter. Now we have our else statement. And what we can do is we can copy everything from string round on the previous line to the end of that previous line and do Control-C to copy it, bring it down and paste it after else. No point in typing that over again if we don't have to, when we just have to make a minor change. At the end of that line, the pasted line, we're going to change above to below. And then we're going to go to the end of that line and press enter. And then we need our end statement. So I brought this up on the screen in a Word document just so you'll be able to see it without me scrolling across in case you're having any issues with it. And I can actually zoom in on this to make it larger for you, so you can look at it and see, oops, it went a bit too large for that, if you're having any calculation errors. So take a moment and do that, and then we'll review what this is doing. Okay, so let's talk about this. So if the rounded to 2 decimal places of the regional obesity rate is equal to the round of the average adult obesity percentage by state county, because it's fixed over state county, and that's rounded to 2. So if both of those are equal, then we want it to say on par with. If the first if block is not actually accurate, then it goes to else if. So that first condition, if that's not true, then it will go to else if. So else if says if the rounded to 2 decimal places regional obesity rate is less than the round of the average adult obesity over fixed over state and county, then it wants you to take the round to 2 decimal places of the difference from region, convert it into a string format and times it by 100 and give the result plus the text % above. If that condition is not true, then if the else if condition is not true, it will go to the else condition. So if the first two are not true, it's going to do the else. And the else is converting the rounded to 2 decimal places of the difference from region times 100 in string format and adding the text % below. And then you have your end statement to close it all out. So now that we have our 3 calculated fields done, we can drag state into the view so it starts a map for us. For this one, let's drag state to filter, and we're going to exclude. Let me do none here, and then I'm going to select Alaska and exclude it and click OK. We are going to grab your region field and your regional obesity rate measure and drag them onto detail on the marks card. Let's drag county and state to text or label on the marks card. We're going to put the adult obesity % of population measure on color. And I am going to just drag that color legend over to the left underneath the marks card. Don't have to do that, but I haven't done that during the course, so I figured I'd show that here. And I'm going to do its drop down arrow and I'm going to edit the colors. I'm going to choose the orange gold palette and I want to check stepped color and I want it to be 6 steps. And click OK. We are going to edit the title of that legend to just say obesity rate. Now we are going to select food insecure, physically inactive, and adult smokers. Let's see, there's one more. And above or below. And we are going to drag those to tooltip on the marks card. Now, for above or below, you notice it automatically made it an attribute. We're going to select all of the other measures over there. So I'm just control clicking the ones that have sum, and we're going to right click on them, on one of them, and change it to average. And then what we want to do is we want to go to label on the marks card. Click on the ellipsis to the right side of text, and we're going to just do Control A and delete and close that box so it's not showing like that on the map. We don't want to see the text on the map. And now we're just going to edit our tooltip by clicking on it. And so we are going to get rid of the header, the label for county, and just have the county field. Click after the county field, type the word county and a comma, and we are going to get rid of the region field and its label. And after the comma after county, I'm going to press delete to bring state up there. And I'm going to get rid of the state label. So it'll say county, comma, state. And we want to select just county, comma, state. And let's make that 12-point bold. And I'm going to give it my favorite color here, which is orange. Now, after that, we're going to have our average adult obesity. So let's grab that whole line and cut it and put it above or below. And so it's your second line now. And what we want to do is we're going to have at the end of the field, so we have average adult obesity. Let's get rid of the title, or the label rather. I keep saying title. So we just want the field there. And then after that field, we're going to type obesity rate, comma. And then we could go ahead and grab, we don't need the title of it, but just the attribute above or below field. We're going to put that at the end of that previous line. Get rid of your above or below label. We're going to leave 2 spaces for the rest of these measures, but let's select the second line and let's make sure that one is 10-point and no color. And then the rest of the lines, let's make those 9-point with no color. And we're going to make some changes there as well. So let's get to our average food one. And we're just going to get rid of the header. And at the end of the field, we're going to type a space and type of people eat few fruits and vegetables. For the physically inactive one, we're going to get rid of its label. And after that field, we're going to type of people. I think I spaced too much. Of people do not exercise. And then we have our adult smokers. Get rid of its label, because this is just so fun to do. And at the end of that field, we're going to type of people smoke. And we're going to just delete the average regional obesity rate out of there. So it can look similar to mine. I'm not concerned about the order they're showing in, the 3 on the bottom. Let's go ahead and click OK. And now when we hover, we can see the obesity rate, and that I'm pointing to Lincoln County in Wyoming. It's 2% below, right? And you can see the percentage of below. And then you're seeing the number, you know, the people, the stats for of people that smoke, of people that eat few fruits and vegetables, and of people that do not exercise. So a different take on looking at obesity. Go ahead and save your file. And we'll build one more visualization, a scatter plot that will be a companion to this map when we put them on a dashboard. So let's just bring up a new sheet. And we're going to name it Obesity Scatter Plot. And so we're going to grab food insecure 50 physically inactive and adult smokers, and we were going to just drag those into columns. And then we're going to drag adult obesity to rows. And I'm going to select all of those pills and right click on any one of them, and I want to turn them into averages. We're going to drag state and county to label on the marks card, and then we're going to click on label, and like we did earlier, we're going to just delete everything out of there. So it doesn't actually show in the scatter plot. But the detail is still there. So if I hover over any mark, I'll still see the county and the state. Let's drag and I'm going to hold down Control and drag it just so I don't have to change the measure again. So I want average obesity to color on the marks card. And you can go ahead and edit your colors, choose whatever palette you want to use. And I'm going to go ahead and make it 6 steps again. Now let's select all the pills in our columns, and we are going to control drag those to detail on the marks card. Again, so we don't have to change the measure calculation. Now when I hover over the mark, of course, I'm seeing the county, the state, and the values for all 4 of those average measures. And we're going to do just a little bit more to this one. We're going to add a reference line and a trend line to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the analytics pane on the left, and I am going to grab reference line, and I want to add it per pane. And so for the value for the reference line, we want the average adult obesity from the drop down. And you can see in the background, it's already added the average for the entire data set and then per pane. And for the label, well, we can just leave it on computation. Your other choices are none, value, or custom. We'll just leave it on computation, which is average. And under formatting, we're going to change it to like the smallest dashed line. And then we'll just click OK. So we have our averages in there. This is of the data. So, and you're seeing the averages per pane on this line. And so if you wanted to change those to dashed lines, you'd have to go to them individually. Just going to leave it the way it is. And we're also going to add a trend line. So let's go ahead and drag the trend line into the view, and it'll be a linear one. So we can see how that's working. When we hover over the trend line, let me get that up. You can see your R squared and P values there. And so let's add a region to filters just to finish this one up. And we're going to use all. And then go ahead and show the filter and make it a multiple value drop down. So this way, the users can select whatever region they want to focus on, and this updates. So I'm going to put it back on all. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to change these headers down at the bottom. So we're just going to say, we're going to go to Edit Axis. And so for each one, I'm going to just change it to say, the first one, I'm going to just do adult smokers. Let me get rid of that average at the beginning. And next one is going to be food insecurity. And actually, I can get rid of those percent of populations, food insecurity. So go ahead and fix all of them so they don't have the percent of population and they're just the beginning of it. And so when you're done, yours should look like mine. And then we're just going to format the title. We're going to change it so we can get rid of sheet name. And it's going to be obesity's correlation with smoking, and I'm doing these words in the order that I have those measures at the bottom. Smoking, diet, and exercise. And then I'm going to do a dash and insert the region field since we're using that as a filter so it'll be dynamic. And save your workbook. I am going to have you format your tooltip on your own, and then we're going to put the obesity map and the scatter plot in vertical container on the same dashboard. So go ahead and pause and format your tooltip. When you're done, I will show you what my formatted tooltip looks like. And I just did minor formatting to my tooltip. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and create our new dashboard sheet for these visualizations. And like I said, we're going to use a vertical container on this one, a tiled one. And I am going to grab the obesity map. And then I am going to grab the scatter plot. And of course, I'm going to turn on my panning on my map so I can move it over a bit. And so these are companions to each other. It's showing, you know, on the top, it's just all about the obesity rate. It's also showing about food insecurities and smoking and physically inactive, which is picked up in this scatter plot at the bottom. So let's go ahead and name this dashboard just obesity. And I'm going to go ahead and hide all of its sheets. And now bring up a new worksheet. And we'll start talking about count versus count D. So I wanted to talk about what's upcoming on the slide, and then we'll get right into it. So our next lesson is count versus count D. Then we have ratio, and then we have standard deviation to end the module. And so I don't have ratio on this slide because ratio is simply dividing one measure from another. So for example, if you're talking about profit and sales, the profit ratio would be calculated by dividing profit by sales. But the others I put on this slide. So count returns the number of rows in a measure or a dimension. Count D returns, which stands for distinct, returns the number of unique values in a measure or dimension. And then you have two variations of standard deviation in Tableau. So you have standard deviation calculates the dispersion of data. In other words, it shows how spread out data is from the mean. When data points are close together, the standard deviation is low. Conversely, when data points are more spread out, the standard deviation is high. This version, so the function named STDEV, is using a sample equation. If you're using a sample of a larger data set, use this variation, and it is the default variation in Tableau. If you're used to doing this in Excel, it's exactly the same. And then you have STDEVP, which is standard deviation population. This also shows how spread out data is from the mean. This version is using the population equation. If you're using a large data set, use this variation. And then at the bottom, because you'll see this when we get in there, the standard deviation factors. In any distribution, about 95% of values will be within 2 standard deviations of the mean. 99.7% of the data are within 3 standard deviations of the mean, and 68% fall within 1 standard deviation. And you'll be able to visually see that when we get to that lesson. On this new sheet, let's go ahead and drag state to columns. And we're going to drag the diabetic metric right into the table. And then up on the column shelf, right-click on it, hover over measure, and change it to count. So when I don't have to, I really try not to create calculated fields because I can do stuff like that. I could do a calculated field, but I don't really have to. So if you were doing a calculated field, I'll just show this to you. We're not going to do it this way, but create a calculated field. And then I would start typing the word count, and then I would just put that field in there, right? The other one that you would use, so you see 2 on the list, count and count D. So count is count, count D is count distinct. I'm going to cancel out of there. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to drag diabetic percent again to columns. And this time I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to change it to count distinct. So I'm going to go to show me and I'm going to just change this to a text table. So when I do that, I get my count of diabetic percent and then the distinct count of diabetic percent right next to it. So in Alabama, there's a count of 67 diabetic percents, but only 14 of them are unique. So that's what that's saying. And sometimes you'll get the same number, like District of Columbia only has 1 and it's distinct because there's only 1, that kind of thing. So again, I normally do it this way. You could create the calculated fields if you want to have more use of them throughout your workbook, because again, doing it this way, it's only for on the sheet. And we can just name this sheet count versus count distinct and save your file again. And now we're ready to move on to creating a ratio. So let's bring up another new sheet. And this one we'll just go ahead and name it ratio. And so if we look at these measures, not our calculated fields, but the ones that came with the data set, And you'll notice the calculated fields is a little bit different here. I'll show this to you. The ones that we created, they have a little equal sign before the pound sign. The ones that come with the data set do not have the equal sign. And so you can see that, and even up here with the reset filter and our above or below calculation that we created, they have the equal sign in front of the ABC. So visually, that could be good for you to know. So out of all of those measures that came built into the data set, 2 of them are specifically for adults, adult obesity and adult smokers. Everything else, well, aside from children in poverty, everything else could be adult or child. So diabetic, food insecurity, physically inactive, they could reference the total population versus just the adult obesity and smoking populations. So we're going to just see, we don't have like a robust data set for this, but everything that you're learning in here, you can go back to other workbooks that you saved and play with these concepts. Sample Superstore data would be a good one to play with for these types of things. But we're going to just basically use this to see the ratio of the adult metrics versus all the other metrics, including children. So we're going to do a calculated field first. And we're going to name it adult specific metrics. And we're just simply going to grab adult obesity plus adult smokers. And okay. And then we're going to do another calculated field. And we'll call this non-specific metrics. Even though children is specific, we'll just call it that. And this, we're going to grab our children in poverty plus diabetic plus food insecure plus physically inactive, and click OK. So what we need to do now is just do the ratio calculation. So one more calculated field here. And this one is going to be adult specific to non-specific ratio, something like that. We could have even done this as an inline calculation, but it's okay. I'm kind of consistent, so I'm going to do all calculated fields for this. And so that way I don't have to drag the calculation to the data pane to be able to name it. And this one, we'll just do the sum of adult specific metrics divided by, so slash for that, sum, and then our next one was non-specific metrics, and click OK. So let's do our ratio calculation to columns. And then we can do region to rows and color. And we'll also drag region to column before the aggregate, so it kind of splits it up a little bit, right? So we're getting the ratio for each region of adult specific to non-specific measures or metrics. That's what we're looking at there. We can also add state to rows in front of region if we want some more granularity there, all right? So that's kind of how that works. So again, you know, you can practice ratios. I think the sample superstore data would be really good for this because it has a lot of, you know, sales, profit, all of that kind of stuff. You could do a lot better calculations than with these metrics. Go ahead and save and bring up a new sheet. And we can name this new sheet Standard Deviation. And it's going to be standard deviation of all stats across regions. And we're going to drag region to columns, adult obesity to rows. And so this is another one like count and count distinct. If we right click on sum of adult obesity and we hover over measure, you'll see the two different standard deviations, right? So the first one is the default one, and that is for a sample. And the second one is for the population. We can use population. We're using our full data set, not a sample of it. So it doesn't really matter if it's large. And it really depends because the number can change. So what you need to do based on the data set that you're working with. And so we get a bar chart and it's showing the population standard deviation for each region. Now, let's add adult smokers to rows and make that a standard deviation for population as well. And then go to your show me and let's do the side-by-side bars. So for each region, we're seeing the standard population for those two measures. We have the adult obesity and the adult smokers. So what I'm going to have you do is add diabetic, physically inactive, food insecure, and children in poverty to this and make them all standard deviations by population. And for the axis, I'm going to right click down there and I want to uncheck show header. I mean, it just takes up so much space and I can hover, when I hover over any bar, I see what metric it's for. So I'm good without showing the header down there. I'm going to show you how to add a standard deviation distribution band on top of this. Even though we're using the standard deviation function, we can also have the distribution band. So let's go to the analytics tab on the left, and we're going to drag distribution band, and we want it on the pane. And so here it comes up with the computation of average, but we're going to go to the drop down there and choose standard deviation. And we could do it by sample or population. Since the functions we're using are by population, I am going to keep that there. So we talked about on the slide, we talked about the deviation, standard deviation factors. And I said that 68% of values will be within one standard deviation of the mean. 95% of values will be between two standard deviations from the mean. And 99.7% of values would be within three deviations from the mean. And so when you do the drop down for standard deviation and you see the factors over on the right, this defaults to 1, which is 68% of the values. And we'll see how the band changes when we come back in and change this. But for right now, we're leaving those factors at the default factor. And at the bottom, we're going to simply click OK. And so what this is showing, this gray distribution band, right, is showing the standard deviation based on the mean, and it's like the min and the max. And then what happens is we have it on 1, so the factor of 1, so 68% of the values fall within 1 standard deviation of the mean. Now, you can right-click anywhere where it says standard deviation, and we can get to edit from there. Of course, if we had our bottom axis going, we could right-click down there and get to edit reference line. But now we just want to change our factors. So let's go to the drop-down next to standard deviation, and let's change it to -2, +2. Click away from that, and we don't have to close this box. You can see the difference, right? 95% of values are within 2 standard deviations from the mean. And if we were to go in and change it to -3 and +3, you can see that that represents 99.7% of the data. So we're going to change it back to our factor of -1, +1, which represents 68% of the values, and click OK. And now you can go ahead and save your workbook, and you can close the file. I'd like to thank everyone for viewing this course. Hopefully you've learned some good tips and techniques to use in Tableau. So by way of review, I'm going to just go over what we've covered module by module in here. In Module 9, we used regional data, and you learned how to do hovering actions, specifically for a dashboard filter. And we also learned how to create a calc that would reset the filter, which was pretty cool. We spent some time going over granularity. We used level of detail calculations. Well, we used 2 of them. We used exclude and fixed along the way. And you also learned how to see more granularity by unaggregating your measures on a visualization sheet. We reviewed the difference between count versus COUNT-D functions. We learned how to calculate a ratio, and we ended the module and the course by learning how to set up standard deviation